13. Coming up to the tree, I could see it was a huge bur oak. It wasn't tall. It was just the opposite, rather low and squatty. The top was a thick mass of large limbs, and it hadn't shed all of its leaves yet. It stood by itself in an old field. There were no other trees within 50 yards of it. About 15 feet to the left were the remains of a barbed wire fence. An old gate hung by one rusty hinge from a large corner post. I could tell that at one time a house had stood close by. Reuben saw me looking around. "A long time ago some Indians lived here and farmed these fields," he said. I walked around the tree looking for the coon, but could see very little in the dark shadows. "Ain't no use to look," Reuben said. "He won't be up there." Rainey spoke up. "This ain't the first time we've been to this tree," he said. Reuben told Rainey to shut up. "You talk too much," he said. In a whining voice, Rainey said, "Reuben, you know the coon ain't in that tree. Make him pay off and let's go home. I'm getting tired." I told Reuben I was going to climb the tree. "Go ahead," he said. "It won't do you any good." The tree was an easy climb. I looked all over it on each limb and in every dark place. I looked for a hollow. The ghost coon wasn't there. I climbed back down, scolded old Dan to stop his loud bawling, and I looked for little Ann. I saw her far up the old fence row, sniffing and running here and there. I knew the ghost coon had pulled a real trick, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Little Ann had never yet barked treed. I knew if the coon was in the tree, she wouldn't still be searching for a trail. Old Dan started working again. My dogs covered the field. They circled and circled. They ran up and down the barbed wire fence on both sides. I knew the coon hadn't walked the barbed wire. Ghost or no ghost, he couldn't do that. I walked over to the old gate and looked around. I sat down and stared into the tree. Little Ann came to me. Old Dan, giving up his search, came back to the tree and bawled a couple times. I scolded him again. Reuben came over. Leering at me, he said, "You give up?" I didn't answer. Little Ann once again started searching for the lost trail. Old Dan went to help her. Rainey said, "I told you that you couldn't tree a ghost town. Why don't you pay off so we can go home?" I told him I hadn't given up. My dogs were still hunting. When they gave up, I would too. "Well, we're not going to stay here all night." Looking back to the tree, I thought perhaps I had overlooked something. I told Reuben I was going to climb it again. He laughed. "Go ahead. Won't do you any good. You climbed it once. Ain't you satisfied?" "No, I'm not satisfied," I said. "I just don't believe in ghost coons." Reuben said, "I don't believe in ghosts either, but facts are facts. To tell you the truth, I've climbed that tree a dozen times, and there just ain't no place in it for a coon to hide." Rainey spoke up. "Our old blue hound has treed the ghost coon in this tree more times than one. Maybe you two don't believe in ghosts, but I do. Why don't you pay off so we can get away from here?" "I'll climb it one more time," I said. "If I can't find him, I'll pay off." Climbing up again, I searched and searched. When I got through, I knew the ghost coon wasn't in that tree. When I came down, I saw my dogs had given up. That took the last resistance out of me. I knew if they couldn't find the ghost coon, I couldn't. Digging the two $1 bills out of my pocket, I walked over to Reuben. Little Ann was by my side. I handed my money over, saying, "Well, you want it fair and square." With a grin on his face, Reuben took my money. He said, "I bet this'll break your old grandpa's heart." I didn't reply. Reaching down, I caught little Ann's head in my hands. Looking into her warm, friendly eyes, I said, "It's all right, little girl. We haven't given up yet. We'll come back. We may never catch the ghost coon, but we'll run him until he leaves the country." She licked my hands and whined. A small breeze began to stir. Glancing up into the tree, I saw some leaves shaking. I said to Reuben, "Looks like the wind is coming up. It may blow up a storm. We'd better be heading for home." Just as I turned, I saw little Ann throw up her head and whine. Her body grew stiff and taut. I watched her. She was testing the wind. I knew she had scented something in the breeze. Stiff-legged, head high in the air, she started walking toward the tree. Almost there, she turned back and stopped. I knew she had caught the scent, but could only catch it when a breeze came. Looking at Reuben, I said, "I haven't lost that $2 yet." Another breeze drifted out of the river bottoms. Little Ann caught the scent again. Slowly, she walked straight to the large gate post, reared up on it with her front feet, and bawled the most beautiful tree bark I'd ever heard in my life. Old Dan, not understanding why little Ann was bawling, stood and looked. He walked over to the post, reared up on it, and sniffed. Then, raising his head, he shook the dead leaves in the bur oak tree with his deep voice. I looked at Rainy. Laughing, I said, "There's your ghost tune. Now what do you think of my dogs?" For once he made no reply. Going over to the post, I saw it was a large black locust put there many years ago to hang the gate. Looking up at the tree, I saw how the ghost coon had pulled his trick. One large long limb ran out and hung directly over the gate. It was a drop of a good 12 feet from the branch to the top of the gate post, but I knew we weren't after an ordinary coon. This was a ghost coon. I said to Reuben, "Boost me up and I'll see if the post is hollow." After breaking off a long Jimson weed to use as a prod, I got up on Reuben's shoulder and he raised me up. The post was hollow. Not knowing how far down the hole went, I started the switch down. About halfway, I felt something soft. I gave it a hard jab. I heard him coming. He boiled out right in my face. I let go of everything. Hitting the ground, I rolled over on my back and looked up. For a split second, the ghost coon stayed on top of the post, and then he jumped. My dogs were on him the instant he hit the ground. The fight was on. I knew the coon didn't have a chance as he wasn't in the waters of the river. He didn't give up easily, even though he was on dry land. He was fighting for his life, and a good account he gave. He fought his way to freedom, and he made it back to the bur oak tree. He was good 6 feet up the side when old Dan, leaping high into the air, caught him and pulled him back down. At the foot of the tree, the fight went on. Again, the ghost coon fought his way free. This time he made it and disappeared in the dark shadows of the tree. Old Dan was furious. Never before had I seen a coon get away from him. I told Reuben I would climb up and run him out. As I started climbing, I saw Little Ann go to one side and Old Dan to the other. My dogs would never stay together when they had to treat a coon, so that any way he left a tree, he was met by one of them. About halfway up, far out on a limb, I found the ghost coon. As I started toward him, my dog stopped bawling. I heard something I had heard many times. The sound was like the cry of a small baby. It was the cry of a ringtail coon when he knows it's the end of the trail. I never liked to hear this cry, but it was all in the game, the hunter and the hunted. As I sat there on the limb looking at the old fellow, he cried again. Something came over me. I didn't want to kill him. I hollered down and told Reuben I didn't want to kill the ghost coon. He hollered back, "Are you crazy?" I told him I wasn't crazy. I just didn't want to kill him. I climbed down. Reuben was mad. He said, "What's the matter with you?" "Nothing," I told him. "I just don't have the heart to kill the coon." I told him there were plenty more. Why kill him? He had lived here a long time, and more than one hunter had listened to the voices of his hounds bawling on his trail. Rainey said, "He's chicken liver, that's what it is." I didn't like that, but not wanting to argue, I didn't say anything. Reuben said, "I'll go up and run him out. I won't let my dogs kill him," I said. Reuben glared at me. "I'm going up and run that coon out," he said. "If you stop your dogs, I'm going to beat you half to death." "Do it anyway, Reuben," Rainey said. "I've a good mind to," said Reuben. Just as Reuben started to climb the tree, old Dan growled. He was staring into the darkness. Something was coming. "What's that?" I asked. "I don't know," Reuben said. "Don't sound like anything I've ever heard." "It's ghosts," Rainey said. "Let's get away from here." An animal was coming out of the darkness. It was walking slowly in an odd way, as if it were walking sideways. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight out. As the animal came closer, Rainey said, "Why, it's old Blue. How did he get loose?" It was a big blue tick-hound. Around his neck was a piece of rope about 3 feet long. One could see that the rope had been gnawed in two. The frayed end had become entangled in a fair-sized dead limb. Dragging the limb was what made the dog look so odd. It felt much better when I found out what it was. The blue tick-hound was was like the Pritchards, mean and ugly. He was as big, tall, and heavy. His chest was thick and solid. He came up growling. The hair on his back was standing straight up. He walked stiff-legged around old Dan, showing his teeth. I told Rainey he had better get a hold of his dogs or there was sure to be a fight. "You better get a hold of your dog," he said. "I'm not worried about old Blue. He can take care of himself." I said no more. "Don't make no difference now whether you killed the goose coon or not," Reuben said. "Old Blue will take care of him." I knew the killing of the coon was out of my control, but I didn't want to see him die. I said to Reuben, "Just give me back my $2 and I'll go home. I can't keep you from killing him, but I don't have to stay and see it." "Reuben, don't give him the money," Rainey said. He ain't killed the ghost coon. That's right, Reuben said. You ain't, and I wouldn't let you now, even if you wanted to. I told them my dogs had treed the ghost coon, and that was a bet in the to tree the ghost coon. No, it wasn't, Reuben said. You said you'd kill him. It was no such thing, I said. I've done all I said I would. Reuben walked out in front of me. He said, I ain't going to give you the money. You didn't win it fair. Now, what are you going to do about it? I looked into his mean eyes, and I started to make some reply, but decided against it. He saw my hesitation and said, You better get your dogs and get out of here before you get whipped. In a loud voice, Rainey said, Bloody his nose, Reuben! I was scared. I couldn't whip Reuben. He was too big for me. I started to turn and leave when I thought of what my grandfather had told them. You'd better remember what Grandpa said, I reminded them. He'll do just what he said he would. Reuben didn't hit me. He just grabbed me and with his brute strength threw me down on the ground. He had me on my back with my arms outspread. He had a knee on each arm. I made no effort to fight back. I was scared. If you say one word to your grandpa about this, Reuben said, I'll catch you hunting some night and take my knife to you. Looking up into his ugly face, I knew he would do just what he said. I told him to let me up and I would go and not say anything to anyone. Don't let him up, Reuben, Rainey said. Beat the hell out of him or hold him down and let me do it. Just then I heard growling and the commotion off to one side. The blue hound had finally gotten a fight out of old Dan. Turning my head sideways, I could see them standing on their hind legs, tearing and slashing at each other. The weight of the big hound pushed old Dan over. I told Reuben to let me up so we could stop the fight. He laughed. While my dog is whipping yours, I think I'll just work you over a little. So saying, he jerked my cap off and started whipping me in the face with it. I heard Rainey yell, Reuben, they're killing old Blue! Reuben jumped off of me. I clambered up and looked over to the fight. What I saw thrilled me. Faithful little Ann, bitch though she was, had gone to the assistance of old Dan. I knew my dogs were very close to each other. Everything they did was done as combination, but I never expected this. It was a very rare occasion for a bitch dog to fight another dog, but fight she did. I could see that little Ann's jaws were glued to the throat of the big hound. She would never loosen that deadly hold until the last breath of life was gone. Old Dan was tearing and slashing at the soft belly. I knew the destruction of his long, sharp teeth were causing. Again, Rainey yelled, Reuben, they're killing him! They're killing old Blue! Do something quick! Reuben darted over to one side, grabbed my axe from the ground, and said in a loud voice, I'll kill them damn hounds. At the thought of what he was going to do with the axe, I screamed and ran for my dogs. Reuben was about 10 feet ahead of me, bent over, running with the axe held out in front of him. I knew I could never get to them in time. I was screaming, No, Reuben, no! I saw the small stick when it whipped from the ground, as if it were alive, caught between Reuben's legs. I saw him fall. I ran on by.